and welcome to episode 29 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about writing that dreaded first draft. And if you're doing Novel November, then you can totally relate because that's what you're like in the middle of right now. But even if you're not doing Novel November, writing that first draft could be really, really daunting. So today I'm hoping to give you some tips on how to get through actually putting that story down on paper. So let's get to it, writing that first draft. Alrighty then, today's episode will be in two parts as always. In part one, we're going to talk about progress over perfection. And in number two, I'm just going to give you some general tips on how to actually get through writing that first draft. So let's get to it. Part one, progress over perfection. All right, I know those of you who are perfectionists out there, this is like already causing you to cringe. How can you have progress without perfection? Well, here is the thing. First drafts, they're messy. They're always messy. They're supposed to be messy. They're not supposed to be perfect because if they are perfect, it will take you probably years to get it done. So we don't want to take years to get it done. We want you to get that first draft done and then go through and make it perfect. But before you make it perfect, you got to get that story down on paper. So let's get to it. Starting with writing goals. Now, I actually did an entire podcast episode on writing realistic writing goals. So if you wanted to catch that, that is, I think, episode 2 of the show. So go way back, but just scroll through and you will see writing realistic writing goals. And that's really setting those goals is like probably one of the biggest things to actually getting that first draft done. Now, if you're doing Novel November, then yeah, you've already set yourself up for that major challenge of getting this, a big chunk of it done right now by the end of the month. But even if you're not doing Novel November, setting goals is like a great way to make sure you are making progress on your work in progress. Now, there's different kinds of goals, and I'm not going to get into like all different kinds of goals. You're going to do a time goal, you're going to do a word goal, you're going to do a chapter goal. You can go back and listen to the episode on that. But I am going to say that setting goals is the way to get through it. You need to have some kind of structure of when you want to get this thing done. Now, you want to get it published in 2026. Well, then you need to get on top of it because it's already November. So maybe set a goal to have, the first draft done by the end of January or the end of February, but make it a priority. And I'll give you some tips on how to do all of that in part 2. All right. Here's the second thing I want to talk about as far as progress over perfection. And that is probably the hardest one for all of us. And that is limit your editing. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. How do you not go back and edit as you write? And I'm not saying don't go back at all. I'm just saying limit it. There's plenty of time to do your editing later. But if you spend, 20 minutes, 30 minutes every single day editing what you've already written, that is 20 minutes or 30 minutes that you could have spent writing and progressing on your book. And what's worse, if you do spend that 20 to 30 minutes each day editing what you've already written, what if in 5 months you change the storyline or you change the way it goes? Now you have to go back and re-edit everything you've already edited. It will cost you hours and hours of time that you really could have spent progressing the book. And then once the book is done, then yes, then you go back and you do that editing and you take this god-awful mess that you have made and you make it amazing and beautiful. But first, you got to get that first draft done. And I will give you one last hint, and this is one that has definitely helped me personally on getting first drafts done, and that is choose a location to do your writing. And I know that kind of sounds weird, and I think I've mentioned this in other podcast episodes before, but where you write can really help get you into the mindset of writing. And that's what you want when you are writing. You want to be in that mindset, which is one of the reasons why editing is so bad, because you use like a different part of your brain to edit, a whole different mindset. You want to be in that creative mindset. You want to be in the mindset of how you're going, where is the story going? That's where you want to be. And I will tell you, so I have done Novel November. This is my 6th time. So I have completed Novel November 5 times before this year. And I think not last time, but I think the time before that, I had this brilliant idea that I was going to write in a different location every single day. Like for 30 days, I was going to write in a different location. And I did. I went to the library, I went to a coffee shop, I went to the park, I went to a different place every day. And then of course, posted the pictures on social media. Look at me here. Look at me here. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I did get it done, but it took me hours longer than it normally does, because when I had to pick the place to go, I had to drive there, and then I had to get into the mindset once I was already there, because I'm totally not in the mindset. If I'm at a park, I'm not in the mindset of, hey, where's the story going? It just, all I can tell you is from personal experience, having one place where you do most of your writing is really, really beneficial. For me personally, it really helps keep me focused on writing, and that's how I get my first draft done. And yes, it's true. Like once a week or so, I'll go to like a coffee shop just to kind of shake things up. But most of my writing is done in the same place every single day. And that really helps me progress on that first draft. And that is exactly what I'm doing now during Novel November. I have my office, and this is where I sit, and this is where I do most of my writing. Once in a while, if I don't get it done and I need to like get into bed because, Pumpkin's going to bed and I need to be in there with her or else she, gets crazy, then I'll finish the writing in bed. But for the most part, I write in the same spot every day, and that really keeps me focused. Now, having said that, once you get to editing and your next draft and the draft after that and your revisions, oh yeah, that I do all over the place. I especially love to do that in coffee shops. But first drafts, getting the story done on paper, yeah. For me, having a set location really helps keep me focused. All right. Before I get to more tips on getting that first draft done, it's time for the crazy law / writing prompt. And if you're new to the show, every week I give you a crazy law. And this is a law that was once upon a time in history a real law. And your challenge is to write a story based on that law. And this is kind of just a way to flex those writing muscles and get those creative juices flowing. So here we go. This week's writing prompt. In Central Falls, Rhode Island, it is against the law to pour pickle juice on the streetcar tracks. Now, that was the law. I don't know if you were allowed to pour other kinds of juice on the tracks or what they have against pickle juice, but there you go. That's your writing challenge for this week. But all right, let's move on to part 2. Some additional tips for those of you, especially if you're new to writing and you just really need some help getting that first draft done. Now, my first tip is actually something I think all writers can benefit for, and it's something I didn't do for maybe the first 8 or 9 books that I wrote. I've only just started doing this, and oh my gosh, why have I not done this before? So my suggestion is write notes to yourself as you're writing. And I know that sounds kind of weird, and I don't mean things like, hey, don't forget to pick up potatoes. I'm talking about notes about your story as you're writing. Because while you're writing, you might be like, hey, yeah, it would be so cool if you did da-da-da-da, and then that doesn't fit into this scene, so I'm not going to write it right now. So write a note to yourself. And I am old school. I do it with sticky notes, and then I have sticky notes all over the place, but they really help me focus later on maybe adding some additional details. And these are things I will go back and add once I'm in the revision phase of my book. But a lot of times it's just really random things I write to myself, like, why is he wearing that shirt? Why doesn't he have a backpack? Now, this is not something I want to dwell on right now because I want to get the story done, but I do want to go back and visit why is he not carrying a backpack? Like he just went camping or he just went wherever. Why is there not a backpack on his back going through this scene? So these are just little notes you write to yourself that, you go back and revisit later. And these might be questions that you need to answer in your story that you didn't do in the first draft, or things that you're really like, what was I thinking when I wrote that? Like throw that out. whatever, but it's good to have these notes for you to reflect on when you are doing your revisions. And yes, I know if you're like tech savvy or whatever, you can do that in the notes section of like Scrivener or, even, Word. You can open the whole comment section on the side. But I am so not that way. I am so a sticky note kind of person. And yes, I even have sticky notes right now as I'm going through this podcast. So there you go. Anyways, so that's the suggestion I would give to all authors, and not just first time author, but everyone as you're going through like your first draft, to keep notes to yourself. All right. Next tip. And this one is so hard. Don't overanalyze. Yes, it sucks. That chapter you just wrote, it sucks. It's going to suck. You know what? This whole book, it's going to suck. When you get to the end, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much this book sucks. Yeah, the first draft. The first draft sucks because you wrote it messy. You wrote it sloppy. You wrote it because you were looking at progress over perfection. But now is the beauty. Now, once you're done with that dreaded first draft, now you get to go back and make it not suck. Now you get to go back and make it wonderful, make it beautiful, make it work. Does that mean you're going to probably be taking stuff out? Probably. Does that mean you're going to be adding stuff in? Probably. Does that mean you're going to be changing your character from French to British? Maybe. I did it once. Yes, all of those, all the above. This is time when you're revising that you get to make your story perfect. But for right now, that is not the goal. The goal is to get that story done. Get that story on paper. Now, what if you get stuck? And this is going to be kind of like my kind of finishing point here. Writer's block, in my opinion, is a real thing. I know some people will argue writer's block isn't real, but I think it's real. I get stuck and I have no idea where to go from now on. And I actually did an entire podcast episode on writer's block and different strategies of going at it if you have gotten writer's block. And so definitely go back. I think that's like episode 4. Take a look at my writer's block one, and it gives you a lot of different suggestions. But right now, I'll just tell you, remember that this first draft, it's messy. You don't have to write the story in order. If you get stuck, write a different scene. If you're a plotter and you've already got an outline, go to your outline, choose, a scene that's going to happen 3 or 4 scenes ahead, and write that scene and then fill in the blank once you've got that scene written. That way you're still making progress on this draft and you are literally trying to combat your writer's block. And if you're a pantser and you're like, yeah, but I don't know exactly where the story's going, then write a different scene that involves these characters. And that scene will hopefully make its way into your book, or maybe it won't. But that way you are still working on this book. You're still getting those characters in your head and a scene written down that hopefully you will use. And now you've just got to figure out, how do your characters get from the scene you've just written to your new scene that you've just written. And then you can fill in the blanks, and that's how you can get your story moving. Okay. And I'm just going to end on one last note, the most important thing, and that is get that story down. It's the most important thing in a first draft, is to get the first draft done. So pick a place, pick a time, set a goal, and get writing. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave me a like, leave something in the comments so that I know what you're interested in me talking about in the future. I drop a new episode every single week, so be sure to be here next Wednesday for book writing tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors. And until then, stay safe, and I will catch you all later.